What you're looking at here in this picture, two diagrams of two different sort of root systems. The one in the left looks a little bigger, and this is because we have one major primary taproot that's longer than the others. Now, there's still lots of branching. We might call those shorter roots that came off of that primary taproot, we might call those shorter ones secondary roots. What that taproot is probably doing is searching for groundwater, looking for the water table. The picture on the right is more of a fibrous root system. This one does not have a primary central root. Instead, it has lots and lots of small branches and a very dense network generally. Now, the main job of roots is, of course, to collect water, and they use it for themselves to stay healthy, but they are sending a lot of it up towards the shoots of the plants. Or remember, the shoots are the stems and the leaves, and they're using a lot of this water too. It sends water up through the vascular system, namely xylem, which we're going to talk about in great detail next week. Also, roots are responsible for acquiring all sorts of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, sulfur, magnesium. But it's not the entire root that's doing the absorption. So what this diagram on the right is a close-up, zoomed-in look at any one of these branch tips. So, like, pick this one right there, say. What this picture has done is it's totally zoomed in on that. Okay, so right at the very tip, and this would be totally microscopic, one might see what's called a root cap. This is sort of maybe what you might consider the protective coat over a very important part that's inside of that tip that I'm going to get to in just a sec. But right now what I wanted to talk about are all these fuzzy, fluffy looking things. They look like hairs. They are hairs. These are not branches, right? We don't have like tiny lateral branches going on. No. Instead, they're true hairs, meaning in plant world, that means they're extensions of the epidermis. They're literally just this elongate part of the epidermis, and that is the part of the root that is doing absorption. So those maybe hundreds or maybe even thousands or tens of thousands of tiny, tiny hairs on just this one branch tip, imagine those are repeated on all of these branch tips. So lots of sites of absorption is my point. Up here, we do have true lateral roots in this diagram. That would be sort of a branching situation like this, right, where we've got one major root and it branches. Okay. What the picture on the far left is a seedling, and it has this its very first root that it's ever produced, and its life is right there, and it is just chock full of root hairs. So much absorption going on in those early days of this seedling. What this beautiful image is in the middle is, well, imagine someone took a very fine razor, I'm talking an exceptionally sharp razor, and sliced right down the middle of this tiny root. So you sort of filleted it open, like butterfly style filleted it open. You've got these two mirror images, the left and the right, next to each other. And then you take that razor and you slice another slice right next to where you just sliced. Much, much thinner than what I just drew. And then you've got this slice of the longitudinal section of a root. And you would turn that on its side, and that's what we're looking at in this picture, is a longitudinal section of actually, really, it's just the tip of this root in our picture on the left here. Now, I'm sad to say that that's not the natural color. No, this root longitudinal section has been dyed so that we can see some really important parts, mainly this part right here. Notice we have a lot of this dark tissue. We have these cells that appear to be very tiny relative to these larger cells that we can see up here, or even some of these cells over here that we can sort of see with our naked eye. No, down here we're not seeing any sizable cells, and that's because they're all babies. They're brand new. They were just born from the cell next door, literally. They are just dividing right here at an incredible rate. This is where, in fact, all of the cell division in the root tip is happening. Up here, the cells are just sort of growing, but all of the cell division is right here. And that is why we call this the meristem. So to be clear, this part right here, it is called the root apical meristem. Apical because it is at the apex, or the tip of the root. Now, what this stuff is, this is all vascular tissue, and we're going to get into the details of what these cell types are, what the tissue types are, what different tissues develop into, in great detail next week. Just wanted to show you one last slide. If we were to take a cross section, not a longitudinal section like this, that was last slide. This time we're taking a cross section, and it's up here through a root branch, not a root hair, but a root branch, a lateral root, if you will. And then that's what's happened in this picture. We've actually got two branches forming, and I just wanted to point that out, that those are definitely different from a root hair. And in fact, in these lateral roots, these new branches over here, we can see other root apical meristems. And it just begins again. Once these grow to be bigger and longer, they will develop root hairs and continue absorbing water for the plant.